We're back on Born Before 64 with Jan Perkins and the book, The Brotherhood of the Red Nile. And I have to tell you, I feel like just jumping in and starting to read the book right now. And I'm so enthralled by just what you're talking about. It makes you want to read the book.
Yes.
I want to know who Frank Williams is on the American side of things.
Frank Williams is the Undersecretary for Homeland Security for Terrorist Activity. And he is, in essence, a counterpart to Mohammed al-Sargon, who is the head of the terrorist group. And there is an interesting cat and mouse game that goes on in this book as to the Americans cut a deal with the Israelis to go in and observe what's going on in central Syria and provide feedback, because they now know that 2 bombs went to Iran to be reconditioned, and they want to try and intercept them before they get into the United States. And so they put operatives on the ground from CIA to try and find out where it's going. I'm not going to tell you what happens there.
Please don't, because I do want to read this.
Yes.
But you know what I want to know is, in today's world, with what's going on in the government today, we're watching Syria, we're watching all these different things. Does that give you any light in writing or helping you in your books? Are your characters stronger than what we've got right now?
Without question. Without question, I believe. The people who are responsible, you've got Ted Baker, who is the assistant to the undersecretary, very competent man. You got John Seacrest, who works at Langley in CIA and counter activities. You've got Megan, who is in charge of the forensics lab at Homeland Security. You've got Sheriff Swittle from Springfield, Texas, who's very much... then you've got another character who is on special assignment from the Pentagon to Homeland, Omid, who all work together to try and stop what's going on. And it's interesting to see the play of the resources that are at play, the decision-making process, the guesses that they're making. They happen to be wrong, but the guesses that they're making. But then there's also the other side of this story, and that is that Frank Williams is married to Ellen, and that's his wife. But there's also a discussion about the president and his wife, and what is their relationship? How does this attack or this pending attack affect their relationship? How does it Frank and Ellen's relationship? There's some wonderful scenes where Ellen is terrified and wants to run away. And
well, can you blame her?
No, you can't blame her. But what I've tried to do in the book is that in some respects, Ellen is not only Frank's wife, but she's a surrogate for the rest of the country. What is the rest of the country feeling?
That's right.
And so I've made Ellen a pivotal character who's somewhat vulnerable, who's insecure, who's terrified about what can happen, but loves her husband, would do anything for him. He would do anything for her. The president is very upset because he made the campaign promise that there would be no attacks on America in his term, and it's a year and a half into his term, and
things are getting weird.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that I want to ask you is, do you feel like somebody mentored you in any way, shape, or form, or was there an author out there that you felt so close to? Do you know where I'm going with this?
I know where you're going with it, but my answer, maybe you don't like the answer, but my answer is no.
So where do you get you don't know where you get your ideas?
No. I mean, I could sit down at the computer. I call this a classic thriller. Why do I call it classic? Because the chapters run between 750 and 1,250 words. So it's like, boom, boom, another chapter. And there may be a cliffhanger here, and I'm going to get back to that cliffhanger for 3 or 4 chapters. And there may be another chapter, and there might be another cliffhanger. So it's just a lot of pace.
Were your parents creative?
My father died when I was in high school.
Okay.
So to the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay.
But creative, interesting. The lady who taught the course, in the second week of the course, she said, "Are any of you creative?" And so I said, "What do you mean? Do you paint? Do you sculpt?" I said, "Yes, yes, and yes." She said, "That'll stop."
Has it?
Yes.
Do you miss it? No?
No. I love to write.
Well, then that was the answer to your question in your mind. What if you become so famous as a writer that you won't even know my name anymore?
I'll always remember you. You were one of my early mentors. I think that it's interesting because, as I said, I don't know where it comes from. I can sit down at the computer at night and I can start a chapter, and by the third sentence in the chapter, I already know what the cliffhanger is going to be at the end of the chapter.
Does it drive your wife crazy?
Yes. She's one of my if you know anything about the writing process, you need readers.
Of course you do.
And readers have a very specific charge for those of you who've never written before. Readers cannot edit.
That's true.
They don't do punctuation, they don't do grammar, they don't do spelling. The reader's job is to read the book and to see whether or not the story has continuity. Is it engaging? Is it keeping the people? And is the story flowing? That's their job. When I did by the end of my second week of class, I was at 5,000 words. So I sent it to my wife to read.
Where was she?
Down the hallway.
Oh, okay.
Sent it to her electronically. And about an hour and a half later, it came back and she'd edited it. And I said, "No, this is not right." So I went into the next class and I said to my teacher, "I got a problem. My wife wants to change the story." He said, "You can make her a reader, but she has to understand she has no editorial right. You should never have somebody in your family do your editing."
That's true.
And so I said to her, we had to sit down and say, "Look, I'd love to have you read the book, but if you can't control that urge to want to change the grammar or change the punctuation or put in spelling or change the flow, then you can't read."
It's really funny because I have to really agree with you on that. And there was another author that's a good friend of mine named Don Greco, who's a professor, actually, and he was a mathematician and became a writer. And I read his first book, and I just absolutely fell in love, and that's what I'm doing right now with yours. And we ended up doing an audiobook together. And I had to sit in a room perfectly silent, which is tough for me, and not move a muscle and read this book as an audio book.
Right.
I was there 8 hours. I didn't even get lunch. Right?
Did you get a bathroom break?
I did get a bathroom break, and I got a water break because you need that.
Sure.
But once you get into that character, or once you get into that thing, you are part and parcel of it. So I can kind of understand, because I like to write a little bit, but to actually feel the feelings of that character puts you in another world.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
When I listen to an audiobook, or we put it in the car when we travel and listen to an audiobook, when there are a lot of characters in the book and there's only one or two people reading, it's hard to delineate. Understand it, in my book, you've got the president and his wife, Frank Williams and his wife Ellen. Then you've got Ted Baker, John Seacrest, Megan. Okay. Then you got all the terrorists. Then you got all the government officials.
Right. So there's a lot of people.
So how could you do an audiobook with 20 characters?
You can still do it very easily, because even in Don's books, he has a lot of characters.
Okay.
So you just have to make it inviting enough and exciting enough that they'll stay with you.
Okay.
Which the actual author of the book did the reading. I talked him into it.
Oh, okay.
And he was passionate. And of course, I was passionate too.
Sure.
That's the way it is. But I want to give your website out because we have to take a break.
Sure. It's Dan Perkins, the letters A-T, Sanibel, SANIBEL.com.
And we'll be right back on Born Before 64.